What is up, people of the internet? Ian Altazar, the Freedom Astrologer, here and again with my good friend, astrologer extraordinaire Donny Lim, or together the world famous duo of Liam. As you know, we're back. We're back again, and we're going to be looking at, I would say, one of the very intense months of the year. And
We are only
welcome, Donny.
beginning.
How are you?
We are only
Yeah.
beginning. It's almost like the year just started with the Aries Ingress.
I would say, maybe I did the introduction very dramatically, intense. I don't know if there's, a lot of not intense months of during this year, guys. But we're going to be digging into the energies of April 2022. And we're going to, give you our best to navigate this, because even through difficulties, we can, find ways of navigating and doing things that maybe grow our lives, or we expand through these.
How was your March, actually?
My March, God, it was pretty difficult. I gotta be honest, because once Mercury moved into Pisces,
Yeah.
guys, Mercury is very important for us on this planet. Everything almost is connected to Mercury, and I had to do a lot of because I'm relocating to another country, so I had to do a lot of mercurial activities to get ready. Still doing it, and now we're finally, I think 27th we're recording this now, we should be out of it already, and now finally things are moving direct. And one of the things I want to really say about Mercury in Pisces is that a lot of people will go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Their mind is not decisive enough. It's like, I don't want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, I want to do that. They can't make up their mind when Mercury's in Pisces.
Oh, or you can draw out your thoughts, though. Literally draw,
whatever works for you guys. I mean, but
I see things in pictorial form, or at least there's an imagery, or symbolism. I find that, Mercury in Pisces, that's the best for that. You can't really articulate it in words as good as you draw certain stuff out or write certain stuff out imaginatively, or and go back to that later.
There's so many good things about Mercury in Pisces, guys. I'm not hating on Mercury in Pisces. I'm just saying, literally, if you have a lot of left brain activities, direct, I need answers now kind of things to do, you have to be aware of that this is happening, and people have a hard time, making up their minds.
Maybe it's
I
just
want to
better
say,
to sit
yeah,
on
go ahead.
it for a while.
Sorry?
It's best to sit on it for a while and let it marinate. Pisces, let it marinate, literally. Yeah.
In privacy, make up the decision in the private, obviously can happen, can help with this. In my mind, I'm a bit of more direct in my life, so I do expect people, and I want that directness from other people as well. So when that's not coming towards me, I find it a little bit, I struggled with it. Yeah, definitely.
Most of my March is actually I'm pretty tired while trying to get out the door a lot of recordings and readings, in which there's more than several. I think it's because it's coming from the Venus and Mars conjunction, and people are really looking into their Venus for answers. But my energy levels all over the place personally, until when Mars, or should I say, the sun ingress into Aries, then my energy started to pick up. Then I realized one thing: it's the first planet in a fire sign. That's not the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've been having the lack of fire, and so that's hard to find faith or optimism or inspiration out there in the world. It's very much of that very closed up energy.
Very private energy, and
Very
I noticed
private, yeah.
I noticed even people, and myself even, I was looking.
It's like a wet cabbage kind of energy. I think that's the best I can put it.
Usually, like, you go out, at least what I do in here is in Estonia is like I go out, say hi to my neighbors. When a neighbor comes, I was like, oh my god, again the neighbor, I don't want to talk to anybody. I was in that mode a little bit, in that Pisces privacy mode. But I feel like that is lifting now, guys. And now Mercury is moving into Aries. Donnie already mentioned the sun is already in Aries, so at least for a little while we get some of that fire back now.
Yeah, and I do have something to show the audience pertaining to the Aries Ingress chart, just to kind of piggyback on what we are talking about.
I need to say something before you go into it. I will do it quick, I promise. And this is a little bit of like a general overall thing. And guys, if you've been looking at my videos, I know, and even when I talked here with Donnie, a lot of people, I do a lot of videos about Scorpio, and the south node, sorry, is in the sign of Scorpio. And a lot of people have been triggered by my videos of Scorpios. And I want to make this thing very clear. I'm not out to trigger anybody. I don't want to make or cause anybody pain. I have a lot of Scorpionic, let's say, energies in my chart. I am one of you, let's say, in a lot of ways. The reason why I'm sharing this especially during the South Node transit, is for us to feel more liberated and to experience more liberation through the very, very difficult energies of the Scorpio, because the South Node actually, I think, is helping us to release some of these darker feelings, these darker emotions, these darker sides of ourselves. And this is one of the reasons, and I hope you will find this information liberating and not triggering. I don't want to hurt you, I want to help you, I want to offer you as much freedom as I possibly can. Thank you for this moment.
Well,
Yeah,
you're
go
talking
ahead.
about a fixed water sign, so good luck with that. It's their own like little process to work through it, honestly, because if I actually think about harmonically what transit Jupiter and Saturn actually use a traditional method to actually derive that. If I look at Jupiter in Pisces, transit via a tropical sign, and transit Saturn via tropical sign in the sign of Aquarius, they harmonically both trigger the sign of Scorpio. So Scorpio zodiacally in the sky, tropical zodiac I use, is the one that's super triggered. And we've got the South Node transiting there. South Node excretes, and Scorpio actually rules trauma. What have we gone through in the past 2 years? Can be potentially traumatic for a lot of us, right? And there's a lot of hidden anger as well that's brewing, and we are holding on to. It's a fixed sign. And transit South Node is there, trying to release it. Actually, I've been reading the news over where I am, and there's a disproportionate number of knife and box cutter attacks over where I am, over here on this small island, and it's disproportionate a lot more. Then when I look at whatever that's going on, I said, yeah, South Node is transiting in Scorpio. There's a lot of resentments, a lot of anger, a lot of even unconscious kind of like underworld type of feelings that's really buried inside us, and the South Node is asking us to release it. Release is a very subjective word. You can release it constructively or destructively.
Anything, guys, that is suppressed right now, it is, I would say, like Donna said, it's coming out. So it depends right now in you, and you need to understand how to do these things. You need to know how to channel these things. I will give you a very, like I said, I have
Not
a
literally
very
going crazy. You know what I mean?
totally.
That's what I see.
I have a lot of, Scorpionic energy, like I mentioned, and the Scorpionic energy requires a lot of time to release. And this is coming from a lot of personal experience, but also working with people, doing work years and years and years worth. So what I did a lot of years, and I still do it, I literally sit naked in the freaking darkness and I release my freaking emotions. You understand? I hope this, gets to you how difficult at times this release can be. And a lot of spiritual, let's say, I would say, area or spiritual industry says it's very super easy and it always like clicks and clacks and, you know, blah, blah, blah. Everything happens very simply or easily. No, it doesn't. Very often it doesn't. It requires years of dedication. It requires years of effort to release some of these things.
And transmute.
And transmute.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let us go into the Aries Ingress chart. And I've set for location Moscow. I won't mention the president's name over there because...
Just one more thing. I think we forgot about the structure, guys. We made more, let's say, rigid. I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. A structure, basically, where we dissected the parts of this video. This means Donnie's going to do one thing, I'm going to do one thing, and then when we're going to do some things together, and these are put into different separate sections. So this is one of the reasons why, you know, one area Tony's going to cover more, and one area I'm going to cover more, and then we're going to do it together.
Yes, it's all about collaboration, isn't it? And we're going to lay the structure of this video as we go along in the next part after I've covered this Aries Ingress graph. And I've actually set the location for Moscow when the sun actually hits 0 degrees of Aries. And what's really interesting is that the sun is actually setting. Every time when the sun represents the president of the country, if we were to look at the country's graph, and what's very interesting is that the ascendant is at 29 degrees, which is a very critical energetic degree of a sign. And then the ruler, which is Mercury, is inside the 6th house, conjunct Jupiter first, then Neptune coming up. That's already not so much of a good sign, and is located 12 houses away from the sun. So there's something hidden 12 houses away that the president of Russia is not telling us. I mean, we all know that he's the king of propaganda spreading, like a lot of leaders are. But what's really interesting is that the sun is actually located just 1 degree before it actually sets, when day becomes night. I think I've actually covered this in my Halloween video last year regarding planets that's very close to the 7th house, because this is the point where day transits to night. And this is where, like, the planet that is doing so, in this case, the sun at 0 degrees of Aries, is actually descending into the night sky, and it's losing its daylight powers. And so what this is telling me, because this chart, this Aries Ingress chart, will be valid until when 0 degrees of Cancer comes along. So this chart is, some people use it for a whole year, but I use it for like a 3-month validity basis. Until 0 degrees of Cancer comes along, where the sun transits. And what I can see for the upcoming 90 days is that Russia may lose its power. And there's a lot of hidden, I would even call it neurological issues that's impacting his health. I'm thinking along the lines of a possible brain tumor that we are not told about. It can even be referencing like a potential dementia or Parkinson's disease as well. Something along that line. But do I actually see the attacks becoming more vicious on Ukraine? Actually, I do see that, because Mars, when the sun entered 0 degrees, is still applying to square Uranus. So there's going to be even more chaotic, militant energy that's going to be imposed in this area. And not to mention that the moon is also at the last degree of Libra. And it is in the zodiacal part of the chart that is called Via Combusta, in which there's a lot of unfortunate fixed stars there. And then the moon actually rules the 10th house, which is intercepted. Anything that's intercepted, there's an added complexity or difficulty in manifesting in this case. And the moon is already very close to hit 0 degrees of Scorpio. What this is telling me is that 10th house in any chart is regarding the success rate of something. So is it going to be like a very peaceful resolution? I don't see it personally. And the moon in Libra is also talking about the image of the country that's projected onto the world. Not exactly a pleasant one at 29 of Libra. So it can be that a lot of cooperative or collaborative efforts, many more countries will be moving away. We've already seen how sanctions against Russia, what it's been doing to their economy and all that. So is it going to be even emphasized here in this chart? Yes, I think there's going to be even more like, peace out, deuces. I don't want to do business with your country anymore. There's going to be more of those energy coming up. And the sun is ruling the 11th house of alliances. And the sun is setting. So is the country is going to really hold up in terms of their alliances? In that countries will still continue to support Russia? I don't think so. Do you have anything to add pertaining to this Ingress chart?
No. You did good. Very good. Very good.
So that's the few things that are actually picked up, and very interesting though. A lot of 29 degrees coming up. Yeah. Pertaining to that.
Shall we talk a little bit about the overall?
Oh yeah.
Monthly energies.
This month is going to be like event-filled or eventful, depending how you want to see it. We have not one, not two, but 3 lunations, and one of them at month end will be the first solar eclipse of the year. And we also got 2 cycles that's birthing itself in the first half of this month. So how we are going to cover this is that we're going to cover the new moon in Aries, which is going to start right on April Fool's Day, on the 1st of April. And then we're going to cover the Mars-Saturn Conjunction, which will happen like on the 4th or 5th of April, depending where you are. And I think about a week to a week-ish after that, we're going to have a Jupiter-Neptune Conjunction. Now, that is a bigger cycle than a Mars-Saturn one. So we're going to spend quite a lengthy period of time in this recording to cover the new moon, because it's going to tie in the 2 conjunction pieces together. And then we're going to move on to middle of the month. I think it happens on the 17th of April, that full moon in Libra energy. And then we're going to cover the month end first eclipse of the year. A very Uranian one.
I would say so. I would agree with that assessment.
Yeah, because it's a new moon partial solar eclipse, it's gonna conjunct Uranus, literally.
And remember, guys, when we're talking about eclipses, a month, before, I've literally seen events happen a month before an eclipse comes in, literally to do with those areas. So most likely when you're watching this recording, even the eclipse that happens end of month, it's going to be already, you're going to see some events, some things happening already regarding to the eclipse as well, mixed up in all of the other energies that are also playing out. I wanted to write a couple of, let's say recommendations or general overview kind of helpful things that I perceived as helpful for you guys. So I'm going to give you these as well in this section, guys. New beginnings are sometimes hard, and you have to put a lot of effort into them. And things might stop you from the inside, your internal matters, or from the outside, external matters. But through all this difficulty, this hardship, you need to keep that internal belief going, and that internal belief in things will help you through those difficulties, in anything that you will start. Now, the other side of this coin is learn to differentiate between faith and blind faith and smoke and mirrors, because we're in a space right now where these can become very, very evident, very much in your face, and in what really seems like gold optimism, or I would say blind hope, blind faith, it doesn't really serve you, and it's much, much harder to get lost in these energies. But keep some belief still that you can do it. And
it very much brings us into the Aries new moon, right? That we are covering on 1st of April.
Yes, couple more things. Just 2 sentences more. Fight through the outer limitations, make shit happen, and those blessings, those faith, those things coming your way, they will come as well. But keep your mind away from these illusions. Notice when it's going into very, very high places without any kind of practicality as well. Do it. That's it.
Want to share the chart for the new
moon? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And remember, guys, this new moon is mostly dawny, and I'll say a couple of words as well.
Oh, I got shit tons to say. First and foremost, this new moon, there's a pile up of planets, the sun and moon, with Mercury and Chiron. What I've written here is that, do you have the mentality, Mercury, of a victor, which is Aries, or are you a victim, which is Chiron? Okay. So when I actually see this whole pile up of like Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Chiron in the first sign of Aries, the first new moon in the astrological new year, that is, the first thing that comes to my mind is that it suggests possibly some new stage of recovery in the pandemic and what I've been experiencing, or there can be some kind of new treatments or clinical trials that will be rolled out that can help us in some way, shape, or form. And since Mercury is about websites, information, communication, and all that, this information may be made available to us via online health-related publications or other forms of social media or communication. This is even more evident when the ruler of everything in Aries is that Mars in the sign of Aquarius squaring the nodes. Now, when a planet is squaring the nodes, if I actually go back to evolutionary astrology, it can be skipped steps, or it can be a push and pull thing in our collective evolution, which is the North Node energy. Or maybe there's something that needs to be released. In this case, when I actually see that Mars and Saturn in the sign of Aquarius squaring the nodes, with Mars actually ruling everything in Aries, this actually suggests to me that perhaps a selected part of society will be selected for this treatment or controlled clinical trial as well. It may be that. And that may actually stir up some kind of controversy for that matter. Because Aquarius is also to be controversial. When I think about that Mars and Saturn squaring the nodes that's approaching, and that Mars also ruling everything in Aries, I'm actually thinking also about drastic military motivated or driven or related cyber attacks, terrorism, or pandemics. So the word pandemic, I use it here, is not so much regarding that biological or virus or whatever. It also can be cyber. Okay. That's affecting online security. And so I would say that it may be in your best interest, actually throughout the whole month of April, to keep your list of most accessed user IDs and passwords, have them stored somewhere offline so that you can retrieve them. Because I do see the situation whereby the website, the payment system, even payment system, because the North Node is in the sign of pain, Taurus, that those systems may be down, and then you don't want to be screwed over by the site not being, or payment system not being accessible, being breached, being suddenly taken offline for extended periods of time. It may also be preferable if you keep more cash on hand in case you want to buy stuff and the payment system that you're using, there's some hacking going on, because when we talk about Mars and Saturn squaring the nodes from Aquarius, it can be hackers as well.
I just want to say a very practical thing, guys. I recommend, because I have my feet also in the IT industry, and I've been in the IT industry. I recommend everybody have their passwords anyway. Right now, like Donnie said, the hazard is even higher, but I would recommend you have a very set time when you change your passwords on those important, websites where money is, etc., banks, I would recommend that interval be, sometimes even 30 days for the most important accounts, but usually 72 days is quite enough.
Yeah. And we will go on to talk about that Mars-Saturn conjunction, because I do have a astrocartography or ACG map when that conjunction happens, and something's about to blow out of proportion. And so going back to storing your user reads and passwords and changing them regularly, alternatively, this can also be like a, biological weapon attack, because we do have Jupiter and Neptune that's approaching to conjunct as well under the influence of this Aries new moon. And this biological weapon attacks are in the context of the war that's going on. That's been going on since 24th of February. And also, Mars and Saturn approaching to square the nodes from Aquarius is also one configuration that are attributed to an increased instance of accidents and recklessness as well. So there can be an increased level of impatience with that many planets, 3 planets and 1 asteroid in the sign of Aries, while on the road. You may see an increased likelihood of road rage while commuting, and people are just like speeding away, you know what I mean? Like when I actually see all those pile up of things in a sign of Aries. And what's really, really interesting when I think about this whole chart is actually the news, or should I say the burying or killing of the news story of Hunter Biden's laptop saga, where he did help secure millions in funding for US contractor in Ukraine specializing in deadly pathogen research. This very much summarizes what I just mentioned regarding all the planets in that configuration. So there may be even more new developments coming in that realm pertaining to that. And one very interesting thing that I picked up is that on top of Mercury, Sun, Moon, and Chiron, which are all in Aries, there's also the asteroid called Aries, E-R-I-S, and also the other asteroid called Pallas of Venus, also in Aries as well, all clustered together. this actually made me think that over this new moon, there may be some leaders that may be stepping down or fall from grace. And that is because of protests about his or her capabilities. And there may also be some kind of assassination plot that may be devised since Venus and Uranus are in mutual reception. When I say mutual reception, means that these two planets are occupying each other's sign of rulership naturally. And Venus is a morning star right now, not far away from Saturn and Mars, and they are all squaring Uranus, which is the planet that I attributed to assassinations or plotting of those things that may be on the world stage. I also want to mention that Chiron as well. Chiron in the sign of Aries actually denotes a wound of the I am principle, which is Aries. So there may be wounding, pain, hurt, or healing that's required from the I am principle. So this actually tells me that Chiron is also the outsider as well. So we may be feeling more and more alienated or isolated in ways that we may be falling more and more out with what the mainstream or consensus kind of reality that they're trying to paint for us. Also, I want to mention that Mars and Saturn, when they're together in a sign of Aquarius, which is an air sign, which is about information dissemination and distribution, squaring the nodes actually means that there'll be a lot of censorship as well pertaining to that. So a lot of regulations. I've already known quite a number of YouTubers I used to watch, and I did check out on one of them the other day, and the channel just got taken off without any notice. And there's actually a post, I think on Twitter or on the alternative to Twitter, which is Gather, that there's appeals have been made to get back his channel, which got quite a sizable following, but then there's no reason given by YouTube.
What was the theme of the channel? Do you remember?
The theme of the
channel, like astrology, or what was?
I think it's actually this doctor talking about open discussions about the flip side of the narrative that's painted by the medical or pharmaceutical industry.
Like the V situation, basically.
The V situation, and how within the medical community that this kind of hegemony. You know what hegemony is?
That means there's this, like, spell it out.
That means there's this kind of like majority group thinking narrative. Very much Mars and Saturn in Aquarius, right? That they're trying to override the rest so that it just storms out any kind of open discussions. Yeah.
Well, that is happening a lot.
Yeah, it is happening
a lot.
Yeah. And we've got I mean, this cluster like Mars, Saturn, and Venus, honestly, all square by sign to Uranus. This can be like very black or white energy. Either you agree or you know, and if like the corporation, which is Uranus, doesn't agree with what you say, they just take your channel off just like that. You know what I mean? No explanations given, which is kind of bizarre, you know, which is also Uranus as well, bizarre. So just note that the censorship laws and other regulatory issues which may aim at stomping out freedom of speech is pretty much focused here. But having said that, there's a lot of initiatory energies with so many planets in Aries. On top of that, we've got Aries, E-R-I-S, and also Pallas Athenas all in Aries as well. If you want to launch something, honestly, I would launch it before month end, before the eclipses come. But otherwise, I would say go for it. If you already been working at projects and wrapping things up, and you really want to launch it, Aries season is really one of the signs that you may want to look at to have that newness of energy, to like push forward with some things. So fantastic to launch something like projects, and new initiatives are also well suited. And for
How do you feel about the second and third, when the moon and
I would
sun
not
are
do it
both
on the new moon
exalted?
itself. I would actually wait
First
till
is new moon. At least
I
for
would
me.
not do it on the first itself. I would do it
No.
probably on the third, actually, when I think about it, because you would want the moon to move into Taurus in its own sign of exaltation, and while the sun is still remaining in Aries.
So
So
both are exalted.
and you
guys.
also want them preferably to be around, I would say, at least 45 degrees apart. So at least the moon is visible and growing. It's still is already bypass that new moon phase. So you can see the moon. So it actually facilitates that project to grow towards the full moon, so to speak. And perhaps on the first, we'll be feeling a lot of angst as well. On the mental plane, Aquarius. And just note that when there's so many planets in the sign of Aries, it's even more important for us to counterbalance that energy, to stay in a state of peace and diplomacy constantly, and acknowledge that, or accept that we are beaming out peace to the world, and not coming from a space of fighting and discord, which is Aries. Because when I see everything piling up in Aries, there can be so much focus that the opposite sign is equally as emphasized in order to have that counterbalance effect. Because it honestly can be a very volatile and combustible and hot time for all of us when there's so many planets in Aries over this new moon. So do you have anything to add pertaining to this new moon before we move on to the Mars-Saturn conjunction?
A tiny bit. Guys, I want to preface this a little bit when I start to speak. I did my best to, in this month, like Mercury in Aries, I did my best to give as much, short punchlines pertaining to the energy that is here. So it's more direct, more clear, and quicker as well, because I know, sometimes these videos we do can go longer. Anyway, on an emotional level, there can be a lot of ups and downs, quick ups and downs. This is very much an Aries moon, new moon, especially quick ups and downs. Be prepared for that. Emotions rise quickly, fall back quickly. And reactions are sharper, reactions are quicker, more aggressive. So be prepared for that as well, even coming from you as well. But if you know it, it's a little bit easier for you to handle it. But if the other party doesn't know, the emotional reactions can come really, really quickly. But they also dial down quite quickly as well. The next part here is a lot about male energy for me as well, because Mars or Aries, let's say, is very much to do with male energy. And Donnie already mentioned Chiron. When we put all these together, there is a sense of like this woundedness of that male energy. When maybe something happened to you, maybe something lately happened to you, but the gist of this matter is, if there's something painful with the male side of you, or the male energetic side of you, or even the more ambitious taking action type side of you, this can come out, let's say, to play, but also to be released, to be healed as well. And at times I do see people taking action here from, let's say, more from that wounded, more from that painful place, which can trigger others and yourself as well. Let's talk a little bit about communication. Quick communication, direct, which I personally love and like, but the downside of this is some words can be too painful, too hurtful, or people can interrupt others. And yeah, I would say interruption is a good word here. The next one, I think, for me is, let's say, the war. The war situation, or W situation, is going to come to play as well, or come up. More news, more things from that area coming to us. So be prepared for that. More aggressiveness, definitely. Also during an Aries new moon, the desire to act very quickly, very sharply is there. So this translates to all areas. It doesn't only have to be your personal area. It happens in a global arena as well. So let's say you're in a conflict like Russia and Ukraine right now. There can be decisive, quick action that will be the news will come to us as well. What else? Oh, one thing I have here is one word or sentence that came constantly up for me, was that like the inner warrior triggered into action. I want to say that as well. And I think one thing I needed to say about this new moon, the mind, it's going to be racing. So what I do see here is it can be a little bit more difficult to sleep. Especially new moons are a little bit energetically charged anyway, and now Mercury is there in the thick of it, in that cluster, in that new moon energy. So the mind is constantly racing ideas, quick ideas. It can be a little bit more difficult to sleep and find time to sleep.
You reckon it may be not as optimistic of a period?
Yeah, I even had it. I think in my overall notes, I had it like, oh, it's a good time to start new things. Excited Aries energy.
Well, I suppose proceed with caution.
But yes, like big, and I wrote like a big but proceed with caution. And it's almost like the energy is like, there's a palpable tension. And the fear is palpable as well. These events are going on, and the pressure cooker we're going to go into now with Donnie in a second. But the pressure cooker is there, and it's fear, and we don't know exactly. The excitability is dialed down. Usually Aries season is like, we're excited, we want to do things. Even with the V situation last 2 years, even then like small ounces or even bigger ounces of that excitability came, but now we're really in the thick of it, and it's like, I was like, Aries season. That almost type of facial expression was on my face. Like, I want to do things, but I'm also a little bit scared.
I mean, when I think about it, right? If you have alternative also is connected to Chiron, viewpoint, which is Mercury, ruled by that Mars, conjunct Saturn to block censor. So that's why a lot of medical, which is Jupiter and Neptune conjunction, and scientific, which is Aquarius, stuff gets censored.
Yeah.
Because they are alternative to what is active Aries projected out, in terms of news and information.
And guys, if you wanna, like, I'm an okay fan of this, depending a little bit where you are in the world. In Europe, second or third, it's already after the new moon. Like Donnie and I said before, it's the time where sun and moon are both exalted. It's like it's like the best time to still start something, but it's not the greatest of times to start. But it's like you're like digging in manure right now. Basically, we're digging in manure, and we gotta find something. Basically, this is what we're doing. Yeah. Okay.
Wait till that happens, right? So I would say that wait till the moon is probably pass over Uranus, at least, if you want to start something. Because when Uranus can bring kind of excitability, but then, it may be this kind of hype and spin that may not have lasting impact. So you may want to wait for the moon to to cross over Uranus by a few degrees, then you may want to think about, okay, like, you know, I can launch something I've been working on for quite some time.
Oops. There it is.
So now let's move on to that Mars and Saturn conjunction at 22 Aquarius.
God, I'm not looking forward to this at all.
I mean, Ian basically plot using mean notes, but I use true notes. When I use true notes, the true notes are actually at 22 degrees as well. So it's exactly square that Mars and Saturn conjunction at 22 degrees, and it's a fixed square. And what's very interesting is that 22-degree Aquarius keep getting reiterated or repeated. Because 22-degree Aquarius is when transit Jupiter station direct last year on 18th of October 2021. That's on 22 degrees of Aquarius. Not to mention that I've just told you about this conjunction squaring the nodes. And then when this happened, Moon has just separated from the North Node as well in late degrees of Taurus. And the Moon is very close to that lunar eclipse point, November of last year, I think on the 19th at 27 of Taurus, conjunct fixed star Algol, which is the Medusa hit energy. And to me, this actually represents a time of requiring the expenditure, Taurus, large sums of money for the sake of progress, which is that Mars and Saturn conjunction in Aquarius, progress, Aquarius energy, because progress has stopped or blocked. Mars and Saturn is to really block something, and in Aquarius is to progress. So hence that square to the North Node in Taurus, and also with the Moon there at the point of this Mars and Saturn conjunction is to really pump out more money. I'm thinking about printing even more money though, in order to be it do scientific research or money that goes into atomic power, which is Aquarius energy, and also social welfare projects, which is also Aquarius energy, all related to Aquarius, the sign. And this may actually drain like the Taurus related part of the chart, which can be royal or national treasuries.
Could I say something really quickly about what you just said, because it really paints the picture here, because we're coming right now into this conjunction. We can already feel it right now when we're recording it. And what Donnie said, social welfare, this is right now I'm still in Estonia. This has been happening a lot because we're accepting, the people coming from Ukraine, which is, a right thing to do in my mind, but, you must understand the bigger implications of everything. Basically, it will influence your country where you're living at as well, most likely if you're close.
And this square between Aquarius and Taurus, there may be promises that we are looking into more eco-friendly or Gaia-friendly energy resources. Whether you believe it or not is a whole other issue. And this also represents this square, what to give and what to save, what to change and what to preserve. And that's coming from a backdrop of austerity and also scarcity as well. Because Mars and Saturn, in the sign of Aquarius, Aquarius also rules the distribution system. That's why it's linked to global supply chain. And Mars and Saturn there, actually, there's a lot of blockages or disruptions in that respect. And also resource inequalities as well. When we talk about Mars and Saturn squaring the nodes, in the resource-related sign of Taurus and Scorpio. So the distribution of resources, which is Aquarius, is squaring or is in challenge to anything that's related to resource distribution. So it becomes unequal. Some people, those richer countries, will have not as much shortage, whereas some other countries that's poorer will be really suffering the brunt of this issue. And not to forget that Mars actually activates the Saturn-Uranus square in 2021 as well, as we speak. And this Saturn-Uranus square will still be active in 2022. I think they will come in Q3 of 2022 in less than 1 degree square before it finally separates and move on. So it's even more of an urgency to solve this resource inequality issue and distribution issue. And when we think about the Sabian symbol, because I like to pull this in, 22 degrees of Aquarius, since it's not exactly on 22 degrees, 22 plus, I look at what 23 Aquarius is in terms of the Sabian, in terms of its Sabian symbolism. That's a mouthful. It really talks about the discipline of self-control. And this talks about the taming of our powerful animal nature to harness it as a resource. And on a lower vibration, it really talks about the employment of society systems which are oppressive and divisive in nature to repress people's animalistic anger, power, and passion for it to be under control, to keep it in check, or at its worst, facilitate this kind of non-expressive conformance, just going through the motion of things, leading to unavoidable conflicts. So there's this kind of pressure point, which I feel with this Mars and Saturn conjunction at 22-ish degrees of Aquarius, squaring the nodes, that something is brewing in terms of upheavals and chaos, more protests even, from what I can see, because there can be this kind of clamp down using rules and regulations to keep people in check, and it's just going to make people even more pissed off. Notice that we are all humans, we are not machines. Machines will be purely the Aquarius energy. Maybe society is treating all of us like machines, you know what I mean? And we can be programmed just by pressing a few buttons. So I do want to share this particular chart because this is the astrocartography map or ACG map when that Mars and Saturn perfects itself at 22 plus degrees of Aquarius. What I look for in this chart is where this Mars and Saturn line actually is at the MC, the IC, and also rising. Those will be the most important or impactful energies for the next 2 coming years. Why do I say that? Is because Mars and Saturn, they actually meet up every 2 years. So every time that conjunct, it forms a new 2-year cycle. Notice that Mars and Saturn line actually rises in Russia. You can't make this up. And so this actually tells me that there may be more of militant action originating in that part of the world because it's rising. And then bringing the conversation back to cyber attacks and all these things, do note that Mars and Saturn conjunction will be on the 4th house cusp, set for Washington, D.C. This actually takes me back to the conversation that Biden warning business leaders to prepare for Russian cyber attacks. This is very much that energy. I do see it here. And not to mention that Mars and Saturn will be culminating in the midheaven, crossing over Southeast Asia and China. What this is telling me is that there can be more because I looked into the country charts of neighboring countries from where I am in Southeast Asia, there's a lot of emphasis surrounding the censorship of information. So I do see this Mars and Saturn culminating in Southeast Asia and also like North Asia cutting across China, that there'll be even more information censorship that really storms out the freedom of speech in that case. But I would say that here, we are not immune to perhaps cyber attacks coming from here as well. So this is what I have pertaining to that conjunction. One thing also to talk about is that when this conjunction actually happens at 22 Aquarius, very interestingly, it also triggers quite a number of key charts in the world. Ukraine actually has got moon at 22 degrees Aquarius. So that Mars and Saturn will be sitting on top of the moon of the Ukraine chart, okay?
The people, guys, it's the people of the land, moon.
And then the president over there, Zelensky, he's got midheaven at 20 degrees of Aquarius, just 2 degrees away from the conjunction. Okay. And the president of Russia, he's got South Node, midheaven, and Pluto at 19 to 22 degrees in Leo. So that Mars and Saturn will be opposing all those points from the 4th house of homeland. So there's this kind of, why am I saying this is because all this paints like a picture of like increased militant action that might be taken against Ukraine with this conjunction. And not to mention that in Russia's chart, they've got a Venus-Pluto conjunction at 21 to 22 degrees of Scorpio. So this Mars and Saturn will be squaring that from the 7th house in Russia's chart. And 7th house, as we know, is pertaining to open enemies and, you know, waging war, those kind of things. And in USA's chart is very interesting as well, because you do have a sextile between Neptune and Mercury. And that 22 degree Aquarius point forms a yacht to that sextile. At the same time, that 22 degrees Aquarius point also forms a trine to Mars in Gemini in the 7th house of USA's chart. What this actually tells me is that there can be planned Russian cyber attacks on USA's stock market. It may also be something related to imports. And in attempts to cripple market transactions, payment transactions, and also supply chain related transactions as well. And that trine from 22 Aquarius, from Mars-Saturn Conjunction, to USA's Mars in Gemini, tells me that it may be like a very swift swoop-in kind of energy from an open enemy of USA. In this case, it can be Russia. So a lot of stuff going on. It highlights a lot of countries' charts and also like people's charts as well. And I think just now from the astrocartography or ACG map of this conjunction, it's very clear that, you know, this conjunction, where is it impacting? So do you have anything more to add?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I do.
Of course.
Of course.
Of course.
God, what a month, guys. I just, even like when we're talking about it, I'm getting all serious about it. And I mean, it is. I mean, in this, there is a certain kind of seriousness here. And I will talk a little bit about like the personal side of things, and then like give you some more global matters as well. Now, always when these conjunctions happen, always look at the house where it's happening in your natal chart. Very important. That's where bulk of them, and the rulers, of course, but even when you look at the house, a lot of the activities, what is going to happen to you in your personal life, you're going to get from that. For example, I had one, what it was like, I think it was like 5 years ago, we had Saturn, Mars conjunct in Capricorn. I hope I'm putting the dates about right. And Capricorn rules from the sun, my 6th house, and I literally broke my foot almost exact on the day when that freaking conjunction happened. Now, I don't want to scare you too much, obviously. If you're taking action, if you're, let's say, have more precautions in mind, doesn't mean that you're going to break your foot or, finger or whatever. Doesn't mean that. But I wanted to give you that because it shows maybe the difficulty of this conjunction that is coming our way. And just to be prepared for it and maybe be a little bit more careful. I broke my foot playing basketball. Maybe not go play basketball or take a lot of physical actions or, mountain climbing or whatever. Because this conjunction, in my mind, does increase the probability of physical accidents, probability of aggression, conflict, violence, and the W, like already Donnie mentioned some of these as well. And when I was looking at the pressure cooker there with the notes as well, and all happening in Aquarius, then the following sentence also came from my consciousness or whatever. The desire to get resources and land will end in conflict, violence, aggression, and hardship for the people. So unfortunately, this I do see here with this conjunction happening. And like Donnie mentioned, algal, guys, these are for me, when let's say we have a cluster or coming in of a couple of things, this can get a little bit, too much or a lot to take. Yeah,
it's like everything converges to that theme, right? That suffocation, that whole kind of energy.
A lot of the things, guys, are talking the same story. And, be careful around, especially when the algal also hits. And, we can say it's the 4th, 3rd. I would be careful 4th, 5th, 6th specifically. These are not my favorite days of this month. Physical answer, as already mentioned, energy can be lower a little bit. Hopefully that new moon will, trigger us. Sun will help us. Mercury will help us. But still, the ambition, the desire of action is crippled a little bit with, or a lot even, with that Saturn fearfulness as well. And this is what I mentioned. Like the fear is there, and the action. I want to take action. I want to grow. I want to move. I want to do these things. But Saturn is like, hold on, hold on, hold on. Or it can literally bring you those outer forces, limitations, blockages that will block your desire and ambition and action taken out in the world. And even right now, if we're talking about the situation happening everywhere, these can be, depending on where you're at in the world, these can literally be, because these W situations are happening. For example, you can't do something, restrictions.
I want to hear your opinion regarding the Aquarius energy, that 22 degrees, because I did write here that besides war, there can be missiles or even nuclear stuff going on.
What I wrote along those matters, it's coming, it's my end, but I can give you right now. I wrote airstrikes, buildings and important structures bombed, fired. Listen, guys, like Donnie mentioned, weapon. I think you said, what was the word? Can you remind me, please? You said it during the new moon coverage. Biological
biological weapon attacks here.
When I was looking at this, airstrikes, quite obvious, I would say, but Uranus. But I was looking at it, I was like, something I didn't even write it down. But right now, when you were asking, The word gas came up many times, and I hope to God, I hope that is not the case in this case. But unfortunately, I do, at least a tiny probability there is that
I
they
think
will
that's in
use
the next
something
part
like,
when we talk about gases, which is Neptune.
especially knowing, guys, that this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction is coming also. You know, these two things are
About a week
so,
later. Yeah.
yeah, so close together, guys. It's a pretty intense thing. I will go quickly through the other matters as well that I had. Overall delays and stressful situations. This can happen a lot, guys. Acts of planned aggression, acts of planned action. But I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a positive note as well here, because it's not all doom and gloom always, even when two malefics, you know, Mars and Saturn are meeting. This is, for me, especially on a personal level, yes, worldwide, well, but personal level, you can control this. It is a very good conjunction to have material manifestation, because Saturn will slow it down, but Mars will initiate the action and Saturn will slow it down. They will both work together if you allow it in those areas where they are happening in your natal chart. So you can use this actually. For the next 2 years, you have to put in efforts there. You have to work through difficulty there. But after, if you do that, if you manage to do that, after that time, you will get the actual results in that area as well. I've seen it so many times, but you have to do the efforts there, guys.
I also want to ask you one thing regarding, you reckon under this Mars-Saturn conjunction in the sign of distribution and rationing, which is Aquarius, squaring the nodes, the material axis of Scorpio and Taurus, you reckon there'll be like greater attempts to control freedom that's somehow linked to like rationing of core basic needs, goods, services via digital means? Depending on not whether you're in line with the consensus direction as dictated by the respective world leaders?
I think there's a big, there's an opportunity for that, definitely. Even when you say that, you know, everything gets super heavy, but I do see that there's a potential for that. And you know, like controlling the rationing and controlling the resources, I think that will happen, because we're in such a, you know, difficult space. You know, you must understand, guys. You know, go back to history a little bit. I would recommend as well. Look at what happened after the First World War. What they did to Germany. Yes, Germany was at fault in attacking Serbia and starting the First World War. But what they did was they put extreme measures on Germany, which drove the German people into very, very bad space. They didn't have enough to eat, you know, use in their country. What that did, and this was one of the biggest reasons for, you know, the A&H guy with the mustache coming into power, and he literally used that power, that, you know, those ideas, how the German people was abused to get to that position, you know, because they were so abused that populism really won them over and made sense to them, because they were hurt. And now look at what happened. The Second World War happened because that happened. Cause and effect, action, reaction, constantly, guys. So, you know, I see everybody applauding these sanctions, and part of me agrees, because otherwise it's messed up. But when you do it too much, and when it gets too messed up, you know, there's a reaction later. We don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but, you know,
well, some preliminary signs are already playing out.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, especially, you know, with the whole like US dollar thing, the decoupling.
Yes. You saw, guys. You already in the news. I think China already gave them paying for the oil in yen, or Saudi Arabia. Saudi
the Middle East are trying to settle oil from China using the yuan rather than petrodollar, which is usually denominated by US dollar.
This is freaking huge, guys. this has huge
And
implications.
if I'm not wrong,
Yeah.
Zimbabwe also is, they don't have enough access to US dollars, so they go back to using their own currency as well.
Not good.
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah.
Okay,
You will
sorry.
order, guys. You will order.
Okay, I will go back. I will go quick now through the rest of what I have for this conjunction. So injuries to bones, breaking or cutting of bones, unfortunately as well. Nervous system really acting up. With it happening in Aquarius, I do see, and also considering the next conjunction coming up, I do see a lot of people suffering from anxiety, nervous system breakdowns, and like literally experiencing nervous breakdowns, unfortunately. So if you have a tendency to do that, you need to ground yourself more. You basically need to be okay with fear as well, because there's going to be some of it with these situations.
You see more people going crazy and start having like knife attacks going around, because I do see that coming on the backs of this conjunction.
Guys, I'm moving away. I'm moving away to let's say a smaller place, a quieter place, literally because of a lot of things that are happening. But there are other reasons why I'm doing. But the best places usually to be are in nature. In more quieter areas usually.
Yeah. Do you want to move on to then?
I have like 2 points. I have 2 points.
2 points. Cool.
All sorts of government organizations are under more stress. All hierarchical systems like corporations, need to work, take business out of those. Russia, for example, this creates more stress, more problems, so on and so forth. And the last thing I wrote here, I say this with a bit of a cautionary. This is a probability that I do see here that can happen during these days. Something in relation to the war will happen, most likely. Something that has the opportunity to shock the world, which will then have people, let's say, rallying in a humanitarian way behind to help others, to help maybe Ukraine. I do see some potential for this type of event that will, not be the most optimistic or positive event.
And
that will
that's on tops of global like cyber hacks and attacks going on.
Yeah, these are happening definitely.
And Taurus rules the banks. So
financial institutions and they will be hacked or under attack by them.
Taurus definitely. Also payment systems like SWIFT. And also other systems as well, like Visa card or MasterCard. So, yeah, just make sure that you look at your bill properly to see if someone has hacked into your card and all that, and have your passwords, everything. Yeah, just it's all about preventive measure, right? To be forewarned is to kind of prepare yourself in that way.
I need to take a tiny pee break. Can we, I don't know.
Hold on.
Stop.
So now we shall continue to the next conjunction, which is a larger cycle. And this one is pertaining to the conjunction of Jupiter and Neptune at 23 degrees 58, very close to 24th degree of Pisces. And the last time that Jupiter and Neptune actually conjunct in the sign of Pisces was around 166 years ago, back in 1856, in March as well, at 18 degrees of Pisces. And then one cycle before that, both planets conjunct in the sign of Pisces in February of 1690 at 12 degrees of Pisces. What is very interesting in this upcoming one, on 12th of April, of 2022, when Jupiter and Neptune comes together at close to 24 degrees of Pisces, is that there was a new moon that happened last year on 13th of March of 2021 at 23 degrees of Pisces. So this degree 23 to 24 Pisces keep reiterating again and again. Transit Neptune, also stationed to go retrograde at 23 Pisces on 25th of June of last year in 2021. Transit Mars will square this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction point at 23 to 24 Pisces 3 times later this year and into early next year. With transit Mars in the sign of Gemini squaring that conjunction point in Pisces. I've gone back in history to actually look at the last conjunction of Jupiter-Neptune that happened in March of 1856. There were actually tremendous and dramatic floods that occurred in France, as well as other parts of Europe. Besides having more rain and also floods, this sense of excessive water also can mean some kind of super emotionality, waiting around and relying too much on what's being told to us before 2022 on what to believe in. So when I actually see this conjunction forming in April, there may be this kind of, we've been deceived, we've been cheated, we've been lied to, a veil has been covering our eyes up to this point. There's this kind of energy that brings forth in itself. And also in certain groups of society, there can be an increase in levels of hypnosis, psychosis, delusion, and also deceit as well. And this can be tied to the pharmaceutical industry ruled by Pisces, the media as well, if we were to be honest. And also some truths, which is represented by Jupiter, will unveil itself that will cause mass or magnified disappointments and disillusionment. Those are ruled by Neptune around this time. And this cycle only swings around once every 13 years. And when we talk about Jupiter-Neptune cycles in general, these are typically linked to religion, mysticism, ideology, speculation, and also inflation as well. And it's about that unified collective global power, collective liberal order, with collective movements that have liberal democratic tendencies, favoring universal moral values. And when I think about Jupiter-Neptune in the sign of Pisces, the term virtual reality actually comes up quite significantly for me. So what this tells me is that there may be new developments in terms of virtual reality that may come forth with this conjunction. But at the same time, there can be this movement of swings to the left with democratic, socialist, or even more or less revolutionary tendencies as well. But having said that, there's tension created between the more revolutionary manifestations of Jupiter-Neptune with efforts by global powers to expand their influence over us as well. So this can lead to, in some way, shape, or form, upsurges in strikes, protests, social unrest, and riots, and just chaos in general. And this can be in the form of labor movement and workers' rights as well. And that's in the back of all the inflationary pressures that companies are facing on a global level. And the latest news that I've picked out from what I read is that Egypt actually devalued their currency and asked International Monetary Fund, IMF, for bailout. And this is because wheat and energy prices have risen so high that it actually hurt the economy. And this is from the Ukraine invasion. This is one of the classical connotations or implications of this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in Pisces. And not to forget that Neptune also rules the unconscious. So there can be new developments in the field of depth psychology as well. And I've actually noticed that Sigmund Freud was born with both Jupiter and Neptune in the sign of Pisces. So there can be a lot of focus on mental health and illness, because honestly, who are the main sufferers, or should I say silent sufferers, in the last few years? Those are the kids that's growing up right now, who's carrying the brunt of this pressure, not having to socialize in their formative years. So this conjunction can be like more focused on their issues in terms of depth psychology and the potential traumas that they have received in the past few years. And when we think about Jupiter-Neptune, I think about the word refugees. So refugee situations may escalate, but on a more subtle level, there can be like an increased propensity towards relocation or migration as well. Because when I think about Jupiter-Neptune, it's about we seeking that future form where we can transcend current problematic and oppressive aspects of the dominant cultures that we currently live within. So it's to free ourselves from that. So I do see this as a migrational, relocational aspect as well on a collective level. And one very interesting thing is that last time in 1856, when these two planets conjunct in the sign of Pisces as well, the fashion and textile industries were revolutionized by the accidental discovery of the first synthetic organic dye by this guy called William Henry Perkin. So I wonder if history repeats itself and we may be developing more eco-friendly or sustainable things within the fashion and textile industry. They may help us to use less of Earth's resources. Because honestly, when I think about Jupiter-Neptune, right, the best manifestation is to really have a higher awareness and knowledge in order to preserve what we have. In the worst case, there can be excessive wastage in the process as well. Because Jupiter and Neptune, when they are together, they don't have any boundaries. So we may go on in this downward spiral cycle of consumerism and materialism that we may just keep on wasting stuff. Because the other day I was actually buying groceries, and the amount of plastic bags that they gave me was kind of, I'm amazed, to say at least. And I was like, is this really necessary? Or is there any better ways to preserve Gaia? Because this is like the epitome of consumerism and material wastage in a lot of ways. When I think of this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, and not to mention that Neptune actually rules gases. And when I think about what's going on pertaining to natural gas prices, all this conjunction basically summarizes a lot of what's going on really, with the gas prices increasing globally. And Europe is trying to get away from their main dependency from Russian natural gas. And they're actually turning to liquefied. Liquid is Neptune. Natural gas, Neptune, from other countries like the USA, which is Jupiter, because Jupiter rules foreign countries. So if you think about, if I combine all these things together, it really summarizes very well what has been going on building up to this point pertaining to the natural gas situation in Europe. But having said that, I want to point out something that is on the positive side, because it's not all doom and gloom. There can be very incredible upliftment in consciousness, because we're talking about Pisces and we've got Jupiter and Neptune as well. And if we've been on some kind of spiritual path, even if you're just a novice, this conjunction actually can bring or carry you higher in terms of divine forces. And that's if you use it in the highest possible way, because Pisces can really help you get past whatever current limitations that you are having in your life, to have a higher perspective and appreciation of what divinity is. And as Ian mentioned earlier, I suppose, in the last segment, there's this part whereby he mentioned about humanitarian and charity aids that can be outpouring to the people in Ukraine. And I do see this coming forth as well with this conjunction. Because Pisces is where Venus exalts in. So people are probably more giving in terms of their possessions and all those things like money, all the Venusian things, to people in need who are actually suffering. There's this kind of collective heartache when I see this conjunction here. Do you have anything to add pertaining to what I just mentioned, Ian?
I do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, some will repeat, but I will do my best to go through everything as like I did before, in a quick, almost like a quick fire punchline kind of way. So it's a little bit easier for you guys to listen, and the video, I mean, it will be long, but it will be full of information. So let's go. Oil and gas prices definitely will continue to rise. There will be more of that. New ideology will rise, in my opinion, that has some roots in spirituality, oneness thinking. But this, I think there is a potential here for it to be a little bit misguided, a little bit too much of that oneness, blind faith type of energy in that. And I would urge you guys to be a little bit more careful when you go into these groups, because one of the things that I do see expanding also is spiritual cults, of these kind of spiritual abuse, I would say as well, can increase, where you have to be really careful which teacher, which spiritual guru, even I can't believe this is still a thing, having a spiritual guru. In my mind, this should stop, and we should take responsibility for our lives. But as of now, there are still spiritual gurus in our human society, so that will expand, and that will, that entire industry of spiritualism, spiritual teachers, spiritual festivals, spiritual workshops, it will expand, I think, quite big. Illnesses cured, new medicine coming out, definitely going to see that more and more of. The downside I do see here is like drug abuse, alcohol abuse. I think we've hint at it with Donnie now, the mental illness side of things. But let's say if you want to look at the positive side of this, Jupiter will definitely also help to bring some medicines, maybe even, I don't know if natural, hopefully it will be some of it at least will be natural methodologies as well, but some sort of pills, medicine to help with that as well. I mentioned this, mentioned that. V situation, it's an interesting one. I do see it expanding end of year. Even now I've seen, because everybody's so dealing with the W situation. The V situation is almost like on the back burner, but I do see numbers going up, then back, then up again, and the thing that they're putting into people for that V situation, I do see that expanding, unfortunately, as well. For now, for a shorter term, most likely not, and then coming back. But like the positive side I want to focus really is curing of illnesses and bringing good medicine into the world as well. So let's focus on that. Like Donnie said, I do see this a lot and already happening here in Estonia and near to Ukraine. People going into other countries, a lot of movement, a lot of traveling happening. It's not all escaping from the W, but it's literally making those decisions to get yourself into a better space. And I see it happening a lot here in Estonia already because we're so close to the actual problematic place. And be prepared, because let's say you're in a close area for that. They're going to be, new people, foreigners in your country as well. And that isn't always, the easiest thing to kind of handle, because it's a different culture, different kinds of people. They act differently, they talk differently, and you need to be aware of that. And yes, Jupiter and Neptune together will help to deal with that as well, having that humanitarian approach to it. But the downside I do see, guys, is like almost like blindly doing it and not having that grounded space where we're looking at situations from a very also left brain kind of way. Like, okay, so what is this going to do for us? What is this going to set a reaction off later on? What is going to happen? Because we need to have these things in our minds as well. Otherwise, that blind faith of Neptune and Jupiter together, I think that can cause us problems later on. Con artists, scammers, I unfortunately see more of that as well. So when you're going into things and matters, please do your due diligence, research. Again, don't blindly give your money to some weird guy on the internet that promises to do, I don't know what they promise to do, weird things. There are many weird things. What was that Tinder swindler guy type of person was on the news?
And also Anna Delvey, was it? Inventing
Ooh.
Anna.
Oh yeah, I think I remember.
Inventing Anna, yeah, that Netflix series, yeah.
God damn it, guys! This is unfortunately also the downside of this conjunction, and just be more. These people send messages from foreign countries, and don't give in to this, and really be on the ground with your feet as well. I think actors are going to, the movie business side of things. These are people are going to come out as being these humanitarian guys and giving money and, being do-gooders. I think we're going to see some of that happening. Fighting for a noble cause that also can be a little bit distorted. So you need to pick what you're fighting for. And I mentioned that new thing emerging, new idealism emerging. Be really certain of what you're fighting for and what you're fighting towards, and who are helping and why you are helping them as well. Now, we talked about a little bit about the mental illness kind of side of things. Escapism will definitely increase, like I said, drug abuse, but also the second part of this is victimhood. You're going to see people being in that victim mentality, and to be totally fair, people are in a victim kind of place right now. At least a huge, entire nation is being made into that, which is unfortunate. But we will see more of that. Kind of global mindset I do see happening here. Big global mindset, no borders, globalism, global government. Dreamland, escapism, spiritual cults, mentioned all that. Blind faith, What in a spoon? The last two things I have for this is being very naive and having a veil constantly over our eyes. Need to get why I'm repeating this so many times. The Neptune, guys, the Neptune, especially with the Jupiter, this is very, 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 very almost. It comes in and you don't understand why you're just like in a weird space and thinking these things and believing these things. You really need to step yourself. Like, this is where I'm always like, be the observer. Be the observer. What are you actually thinking? What are you believing? What are these things? You know, take yourself and pull yourself for a moment out of that. You know, switch off the news, media, whatever spiritual guru you're listening, and for a moment, look at what you're doing. Look at what you're believing. Look at what you are putting and giving your energy to. And the last one is abusing drugs, medicine with the excuse of a higher purpose, higher cause, and then getting lost in those dreamlands. So positives, creativity, spirituality will expand, new medicine, healing will come, people being humanitarian, connected to God, connected to other realms of existence. And the negatives, I'm not going to repeat. Let's focus on those things.
And if I were to look at the point where this conjunction takes place and plot it into an astrocartography or ACG map, just like the previous Mars and Saturn conjunction map that I've plotted, you can see that Jupiter and Neptune, when they are together, it also crosses Washington, D.C. as well. But this time, it is culminating. So a lot of emphasis on the US in both conjunctions in April.
One thing I think you mentioned, and I forgot to mention, I know it's happening already in Australia, but the floods.
Yes, the floods in Eastern Australia. Yeah.
It's a little bit of a concern for me, especially I do see more of that happening. So, hard to exactly say, where you're at, especially if you're lower places. I mean, already logically,
I think it will take place more when Jupiter-Neptune is rising. That means you go back to this line, which is cutting across parts of Europe and also into the center of Africa. So let me just zoom this where it is actually where Jupiter-Neptune, when they conjunct, is actually rising. It actually cuts across Europe again. So I actually think about the floods again that happened 166 years ago, where this conjunction also happened in the sign of Pisces. And then 166 years later, there's going to be, when the conjunction happens, it's going to rise if you are in Europe. And also in the middle part of Africa as well. What this is also telling me is that it's also pertaining to the US, because it's culminating on the MC, cutting across the US, selling liquefied natural gas to Europe as well. That can be also one of the manifestations. On top of the floods and also all those things. And not to mention that Jupiter, Neptune, when their conjunct is actually in the fourth house or in its lowest point, opposite the midheaven, and this line crosses China and also Southeast Asia. So I wonder if there will be some kind of, on one hand, it could be natural disasters such as floods. But when I think about Jupiter, Neptune in Pisces, I also think of oil spills as well in the ocean, in the deep sea, particularly in Pisces, that may be occurring in these localities as well. Not to mention that Jupiter-Neptune conjunct in Pisces, there can be like big dreams, talking very big visions and all those kind of things, or it can be mass deception as well. So I wouldn't pay too much trust and truth value into what you hear and see in the month of April. I think in short, that's what I have to say. But if I were to just bring it into perspective, the union between Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces follows the new cycles that's initiated between Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto in Capricorn in the year 2020. And that correlated with the onset of the whole global pandemic. And the conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius at the end of 2020 that established a new volatile era that we are living in right now. And this new cycle is also at the backs of that waning square between Saturn in Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus that coincides with rapid innovations and sudden collapses across societies in both 2021 and 2022. As a parting note for this section, it's also notable, especially that the meaning of Jupiter-Neptune cycles is diametrically opposed to Saturn and Pluto cycles that shaped 2020, 2 years back. And I actually refer to this astrologer and historian called Richard Tarnas. He actually wrote this book called Cosmos and Psyches. And he basically described Saturn and Pluto as aligning with conservative empowerment and eras of international crisis and conflict, empowerment of reactionary forces and totalitarian impulses, organized violence and oppression. And when we take the concept of Saturn-Pluto cycles, this is very much opposing this Jupiter-Neptune cycle, which has a very inspiring vision that can provide a counterbalance to the difficult despair that's brought on by Saturn and Pluto cycles. What I really hope in the highest form of manifestation is that this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, new cycle, can actually help us to nurture new dreams and ways to recover from the setbacks and resets that's brought about this whole pandemic situation. Do you have anything more to add?
I have a tiny bit, because I forgot about. You mentioned VR reality, but I wanted to also add to that, because I see definitely VR reality and people getting lost in it. But also there's a thing, guys, that is also happening is augmented reality. Literally in my hand right now, I have an app on my phone that literally puts the constellations into my room. So what it does is I point the phone on my room, whenever it shows which planets are where, which constellations are where, what is happening in the sky. So guys, this is going to happen more and more and more. Which in this case, obviously, this app is called Skyview Light. I think Skyview Light. This is a great app. Obviously, my bias with that is awesome, but it's really easy if you put on those glasses and put on those things. It's really easy to get lost in it. So let's do our best to find the things that are actually benefiting us, that are not keeping us stuck in addiction or in fairylands, but they also help us navigate this reality and navigate this reality with our hands and feet on the ground. At the same time, we are interacting with these new technologies.
It's a tough one in Pisces where this conjunction lies, because on one hand, Pisces is a very healing sign, so it can bring around some kind of healing with this virtual or augmented reality. But on another, this can represent like massive escape from reality as well.
Total escape, guys. This is the times we're living at. It's like we can escape or we can heal. Two things, very different, but very easy to get lost in one of those.
Yeah. So on one hand, it's a very revolutionary kind of energy with this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction cycle. This new cycle that will last for the next 13 years. But then we got to really thread uh, very carefully later this year. That's where transit Mars in Gemini will be squaring this 23-degree Pisces point 3 times. And not to forget that when transit Mars will be moving back and forth in the sign of Gemini, Jupiter will dip back into the late degrees of Pisces as well, very close to Neptune. So indirectly, Mars will be squaring both Jupiter and Neptune later this year for a good chunk of a few months. And just make sure that in mostly in Q4, that there will be a rise of people within society that may act as a domestic crusader or persecutor as well. So look out for those people who like think they know that, like, oh, I'm supposed to save humanity, all those kind of BS.
Yeah, I would say fake spiritual gurus and fake spiritual
Oh yeah.
fathers.
Yeah. And also like Mars in Gemini, it can also be the swindler. Squaring Jupiter and Neptune, there can be more scammers as well later this year. But we will get to that when Q4 of 2022 swings around. Yeah.
Okay. Full moon. We're going to
Oh,
the
yeah.
full moon. Got so many things happening, guys.
I know. It's a packed month.
It's a packed month, and let's take on this full moon as well, which is again happening in, we can say, a little bit of a strange degree, again via combusta. And guys, I want to say a couple of words about this 15 degrees until 15 degrees from Libra to 15 degrees to Scorpio. Now, the ancients and traditionals, yes, they said it's a problematic place. I've seen it, let's say, affecting in the real outer world. Yes, it is. But as someone who has their ascendant between those degrees, I can say it's not only bad. I've had many good things in my life happen. It's not only bad, and not only bad things are going to happen in my life. This is not exactly true. But when we're talking about this full moon happening on 26 degrees out of bounds in Libra via combusta, and to add to it, we have a T-square forming with the transformational planet of Pluto, again at 28 degrees, Mars term. It does paint a picture of a bit of a pressure cooker here. I don't know how many freaking new moons and full moons we're going to have with T-squares, but it's almost unbearable, guys. But here's another one. So let's start with the, let's say, more of the easier things or overall general things, because it is happening in the sign of Libra. So this means literally immediately that brings in relationships, business, pleasure, private, personal, marriage type relationships. And this is also going to be one of the biggest focuses on during this full moon. And a lot of you are going to see results from those partnerships. Some partnerships are going to be taking to the next level, new level, let's say. Some have the tendency, what I've seen very often, when there is a full moon in Libra, a lot of partnerships in the next 2 weeks after that full moon, even coming into it, there is a tendency to start almost assessing them more vividly or vigorously. And when that full moon happens, the crescendo, the real energetic impulse comes to fruition. And very often people just end these relationships. They step out of these partnerships as well. And just, because there are so many emotions, feelings happening during a full moon, especially now with this Pluto square, be, you know, be understanding. And I'm going to get into what you can do as well. But business projects coming to fruition, you're seeing the results from those projects where partners are involved, bearing some fruit. It doesn't have to be only negative, but Pluto will make it a little bit uncomfortable as well. There's a pressure to get something done quite quickly. Is one example that can happen. The negative side of this, when we're talking about business relationships, is there can be, hidden places of control and manipulation. Maybe one partner is doing something to control the other, and this has the potential now to come to life and to be seen during this lunation. Although the emotional, the deeper pressure there leading up to it can get quite uncomfortable. Very similar also in romantic relationships, guys. So romantic, it's usually more emotional because it's somebody very close to us, and now the let's say hidden places of control that are even maybe happening in your personal relationships relationship actually can come out to be discovered and understood and transformed. But it's not going to be comfortable. I have to say this many times during this because it's not going to be comfortable at all, I think. Let's go. What did I want? And couple of things to understand also about this full moon on a deeper level. How we value ourselves is a lot to do with Libra as well. And because we can take on a lot of the other during Libra, let's say, energy. When the Libra energy is strong, everything everybody else says seems very, very true. We take it on almost as our own. And we need to understand what is the actual thing that is us. Because it's easy for somebody, let's say, to come in and say, you need to do this, you need to be like that, and you need to do in your business like that, or you need to be in your relationship like this very specific thing. But it is important to use this Pluto square as well to really dig deeper, understand what is going on. Is somebody else giving us this, or am I really like this? Really need to pay attention to that. And how others want us to exist in the world. Too much focus on that. Don't need to take your actions in life only from what other people are saying to you, guys. Really important. Not only for Libras, especially during this full moon, for everybody else as well. Now the Pluto also needs us to transform ourselves, because it's not only about the relationships or the other. The other isn't always the one to blame. They aren't always the one who's making these deeper things happening, these manipulative things happen to us. We are the ones also that can be controlling. We have these tendencies, these manipulative tendencies, and these can come out as well. So what does this require of us? Because we're talking about the moon, this requires a lot of emotional transformation. And in this time, this emotional transformation happens, yes, it happens within us, but it also happens through the other, through the partner, through the business partner, and in general, through the other. And some manifestations for you guys is, maybe an older person, more experienced person comes and starts exerting control over us. Maybe it's a partner, maybe it's a business partner, says that, this is how it should be. You need to do things like that. Not always the case. And then this is your opportunity to really get your deeper power out and say like, hey, no, this is how I like to do it. And you need to go into that space of diplomacy, because it is Libra, and Yes, Pluto will make it uncomfortable, but if you want to, make something out of this, make something out of the relationship, make something out of the partnership, you need to have that emotional maturity, emotional transformation happening, but at the same time be diplomatic, understand them, understand where they're coming from, so then it's easier to transform these partnerships and relationships. Otherwise, yes, the ending or the death, Pluto, all of these partnerships, relationships is here. So I hope I'm not scaring you too much. But yeah, something I wrote here is like, nothing true can exist under the control of darkness, or even under control. I know it's a heavy sentence to take in maybe, but I do see a lot of these hidden things that you're already in a pretty darn good relationships. Even then, these can come out play. You maybe didn't know something about them. Maybe now the darker side starts to come out and play. You need to transform it both in order to the relationship to be transformed. So what does Pluto also do here? I want to really prepare yourself, because when we're talking about a Pluto square moon, and this is a big part of this, sometimes it's easier, or the human mind thinks it's easier to suppress these feelings, to suppress everything and not say anything. Maybe it will take care of itself. The problem here, guys, is during this full moon, you won't be able to suppress these matters anymore. So outbursts, emotional reactions, they will escalate, they will happen. But if you manage, and this is the one of the key parts of this full moon, if you manage to transform your emotions, if you transmute your emotions and feelings into something higher, something true, bring those darker feelings that you have to the light properly, then you can use, in my mind, the Libra diplomacy, a diplomatic side, although yes, harder, because the Venus isn't doing as well as we would like. Yes, now it's in Pisces, but still, guys, I'm seeing now more of the, let's say, the qualities of the Luciferian Venus. It is, like Donnie, I think, said in the last video, it's more masculine. So when it's more masculine, the diplomacy, it's harder to grasp. It doesn't mean it's impossible to grasp the diplomacy and to put yourself in the shoes of the other and to go into that space, to understand them. But it is a little bit harder to do right now. And what I want you to do is literally watch out for when you start to suppress these feelings and emotions. If you start to do that too much, that full moon will bring them out. And in the other side of this is literally, let's say somebody does, maybe it's a romantic relationship, maybe somebody does something that they are not supposed to. Instead of suppressing that immediately, and it's like thinking up some spiritual excuse why it's so good or okay, just say, okay, so this hurt me, I have a feeling, I processed this feeling, and now, after processing this feeling, I can ask you to do something differently. Please don't do that. Let's do something else. It doesn't have to be all emotional and reactions and reactive, etc., etc. It can be used to transform emotions. Now, I have a couple of more words here, a couple of more key words that I want to share, and then I'm done with this full moon. Understanding other people's perspectives. The other becomes important, but don't lose yourself in the other. What would they feel, think, do in this situation? Ask yourself that. I transform alone and through the other. Diplomacy and letting go. And I added here, we won't want to at first to let go. Now the danger side of Libra. And again, I'm putting shade on myself because I have Libra ascendant. And that's okay. I know that part of myself. And I, guys, want to say, I've been seeing lately a lot of these things is like, you know, we identify with the signs, and I'm Libra, I'm Scorpio, I'm Leo, I'm Virgo, I'm Pisces, you know. And when somebody says something negative or the downside of that sign, we get triggered, we get pain, you know, etc. This happens, guys. It doesn't have to be like that at all. And I know, as a, you know, that Libra side of me, I know I can be shallow at times. I can, and that really, that understanding of that I can be sometimes too shallow, that understanding makes me or helps me go deeper with people, be more committed, more connected to people. So use those negative things that you dig from those places, from astrology, use those to transform and transmute and change your life for the better. And now what I wrote here about this specific full moon is being too shallow and not going deep enough. This is the kind of can be the Libra way. It's like I'm on the surface, but there's something percolating underneath. Maybe it's some secret. Maybe there is some pain. Maybe there's some thing that needs to be talked about in a business partnership, in a relationship. This will come out. But if you want it to come out healthily, do it, do the work, go deeper, ask yourself these deeper questions before the pressure cooker will get bigger. Needing to make a decision because of someone else's opinion, or being pressured into taking a decision because of someone else. Manipulation, control, jealousy, guys. This one is a big one in this full moon. Jealousy in relationships and it coming to light. Both are playing here how we do it to others and how others are maybe jealous and manipulative and controlling of us as well. I think I have it all now. It's all yours.
Well, the thing is that when I see where the moon is, although it's in Via Combusta region, which spans 15 of Libra to 15 of Scorpio, two very benefic fixed stars are actually close by that moon, actually, at the point of this full moon, which are Spica and also Arcturus. So this can be one that is a very spiritual full moon, in other words, and it's squaring Pluto, which means that shadow work is very much encouraged over this period in the middle of April, but then there'll be a lot of emotionality that will be brought to the surface. Maybe there's a lot of rigidity because Pluto in Capricorn can be very rigid. But if we talk about the more mundane level, this can be like the imposing of draconian control measures when that Sun and Moon both square Pluto in Capricorn, that is. It means there's a top-down order that comes through. But then when I think about that Sun and Moon both forming trine and sextile to that Saturn, is even more so when I think about it. So there can be like implementation in the middle of April regarding like rules and regulations pertaining to censorship of information and the dissemination and distribution of alternative media. And when I think about that Jupiter and Neptune conjunction, which, 24 degrees, it is very tightly quincunx or in conjunct that moon in Libra. So this censorship and blockage of dissemination and distribution of information can be pertaining to the truth emerging from information or media leaks. Pisces is leak, pertaining to big pharma deceit and also lies and deception that we are being told. And mainstream media may dismiss those as propaganda when they are in fact the truth. So this whole month, there's a lot of this kind of, is it true, is it not true? Is it true, is it not true kind of energy that's swinging back and forth. And if I were to look at the Saturn-Pluto midpoint, which is the shortest distance between these two planets, it is close to exact square to Mercury and Uranus conjunct in Taurus. This actually indicates to me organized crime that pertains to identity or data theft. It's even more so, so ensure that you physically back up your most accessed social media or banking accounts in case those things go down. And it may not be an idea throughout April to hold more cash if you need to buy stuff. I do see some of the ATMs may be hacked into as well, and you may not be able to draw money very close to where you are. So one of the things that I want to reiterate here, but I would say that this full moon has a very big spiritual potential if you want to really illuminate the shadow self and do some shadow work pertaining to that. Because that moon that conjuncts fixed star Arcturus and Speaker can really bring about the finer cosmic energy to you in order to transmute stuff. I know I'll be doing some kind of spiritual work over this, this upcoming full moon. Yeah. So do you want to move to...
I have one more sentence that I forgot to mention.
Yeah.
Is it's almost like the fear of being controlled or manipulated can come into play as well. Like, oh, I'm so controlled, I'm so manipulated. And the gist of this, guys, is to actually, like Donnie said, and I repeat it, I think as well many times, is like do the inner work. Doing, releasing, transforming those feelings and emotions. Then after the full moon is done and the square turns into a sextile, then you can actually feel empowered as well. And this is important to understand, that because it's not like Pluto and moon square immediately just bad things and oh, I'm feeling powerless and there's people trying to control me all the time. It's a matter of going deep and transforming your fears, emotions, and then out of that becoming or coming into power or being empowered through that process.
Wow, the full moon like squaring Pluto and sextile and trining Saturn, there can be something in the world that is very destructive and very militant. Nuclear stuff can also be brought into the picture with the Aquarius Saturn, and with that Pluto as well, something atomic. So it may be like the culmination of a lot of collective and global fear and mongering that's been going on as well.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Because, guys, it's not only about personal level, emotional, psychological transformation. It is because, these two are meeting, and it's so powerful during a full moon, or 3 even, we can say, that the fear can be really palpable, like really feelable and touchable almost, we can say. Well, there we go.
But then we end the month with
just
boom, bada bang, you know what I mean? So we've got a first solar eclipse of the year, and it's a partial solar eclipse. And this will be happening on, April 30th. For me, it's going to happen in the early mornings of May 1st. So depending where you are, in which part of the world. But then this is an interesting partial solar eclipse, because 18 months later, this solar eclipse will progress into a partial lunar eclipse happening on 28th to 29th of October of next year at 5 degrees of Taurus. So there will be, this is like a seed that's planted that needs time to play out. And we will not see the true impact of this solar eclipse until 18 months later in late October, close to Halloween actually next year. We will have a lunar eclipse, one of the last eclipses in Taurus and Scorpio axis. And this is part of the Saros Cycle 6 North family of eclipses, whereby the themes of this series of eclipses pertains to or concerns with our relationship with father and authority figures, or the need to take responsibility and control for ourselves. And there may be a time that's coming to accept commitments that are presented to us, commitments which could be due to another's illness or another's unreliability, lies, or deceit, for that matter. So we can replace authority figures with like governments. And so you roughly know like this family of eclipses, what it can be, what we can be dealing with as a collective. And this eclipse will happen at 10 degrees 28 minutes of Taurus. So depending whether you've got any planets that's in the fixed signs plus minus 2 degrees from that 10 degree eclipse point, then this eclipse is for you. I just want to tell people that in the Metonic cycle, because eclipses do come back every 19 years plus, so the last time this eclipse actually happened was around 19 years ago. So around 2003. So the eclipse point is around the same, just that, you know, the configuration within the eclipse chart is very different back then. So, but then if you've got planets that's triggered by that 10 degree Taurus point, you just reflect upon what happened like back in 2003, what actually was going on. I know jolly well what happened. So it will be a significant one for me. Yeah, for sure. And this particular partial solar eclipse will be visible in South and West of South America. It will be also visible in the Pacific, Atlantic, and also Antarctica as well. And just one note, with this solar eclipse, we have just stepped out of that retrograde free period, because if you see, Pluto has just gone retrograde. And this will be the first of many planets to come that will turn retrograde. And Pluto will come first. I think the next one will be either Uranus or Mercury will turn retrograde. So we will be entering a period within this year, after April, that there will be one by one that the planets just turn retrograde one by one. And it just stacks up in terms of energy. So we'll be revisiting whatever that we've experienced in Q1 of 2022 altogether. So what's very interesting in this solar eclipse is that Uranus is very much highlighted. Because Sun and Moon are very close to Uranus, this will be later this year on 8th of November of 2022, there's a total lunar eclipse conjunct Uranus. That will be a big one. But this one is like the seeding of something. And so you may find that over this partial solar eclipse, your energy may be very sporadic, very erratic, and very very violent swings up and down. And there may be a lot of irritations that you may be feeling. But that is a very, on one hand, speculative, but also very innovative energy. And it brings along that genius beam of light that can be coming into our subconscious. So there may even be downloads really from higher parallel dimensions because of this solar eclipse conjuncting Uranus. And I just want to mention about the Venus that is at 27 of Pisces conjuncting very tightly to Jupiter. Because Venus at 27 Pisces is, on one hand, in its sign of exaltation, but the degree of exaltation is also 27 degrees. So Venus is at its highest, dignity and in terms of degree and sign placements. When it's conjunct Jupiter, Jupiter is wastage. And when I think about this conjunction at the back of Neptune that's very tightly behind, then we may actually reflect on the wastefulness of resources stemming from consumerism and corporate greed, with the lack of recycling programs that they are committed to, that contributed to our ecosystem crisis that we have now. And this may be the seed of all these awareness. And we will actually see the full impact 18 months later when this partial solar eclipse becomes a partial lunar eclipse, very close to Halloween next year. We will see everything coming into fruition because full moons do that. That's 18 months down the road, close to Halloween next year. And we will see the true impact of what I call the everything bubble fully bursting then. So now it's like this pressure cooking, resource-related austerity or lack of that we are facing because we've been wasting so much, building unnecessary stuff or using resources, things like fast fashion. I really hate fast fashion, honestly, because of how much wastage actually goes down the drain. And however, all these realizations as it is unfolding from this partial lunar eclipse towards that Halloween 2023 lunar eclipse is really pushing us to find alternative, innovative, and more importantly, sustainable, because the partial solar eclipse is in the sign of sustainability, Taurus. In terms of research management and exploration. And when I think about this partial solar eclipse as well, there can be this kind of, at least on the short to middle term, some kind of loosening of global mandates and regulations pertaining to socialization restrictions. I don't want to throw a dampener because I do see somewhere along down the line there may be more lockdowns. But hey, enjoy it while you can. That's all I can say. And I also want to bring in this Vedic term called Kala Sapa Yoga. And all the planets are within the bounds of the North and South Node. We don't talk about the moon here because the moon just darts around the zodiacal wheel so fast. And under this solar eclipse, we do have Mercury, which will get out of the bound of the North and South Node. But having said that, Mercury at 0 degrees of Gemini, it actually conjunct this fixed star called the Pleiades or Alcone, Alcyone. And this may indicate potentially many disappointing news stemming from prolonged shortage of resources and inflation that will be permanently killing businesses that we value and love. On top of that, there may be some kind of the V impacts with regards to physical and mental development within children who are the silent sufferers over this pandemic as well. Alcone or the Pleiades is also a point where things that we might reject because we don't want to see or refuse to see something. We don't want to acknowledge something, basically. There's that kind of energy. And this may reflect upon an issue that's brought up by the news that we may choose not to see or acknowledge, or not able to or willing to acknowledge. For that matter, there may be something around this solar eclipse that may bring up that as well. And last but not least, I've actually written here that investors in the stock market may get a rude awakening with market chaos from blind spots. That's that Mercury conjunct Alcone or the Pleiades fixed star again. And not really thinking deeper into the fundamental mechanics and forces that's currently operative and active globally. So that's about all I have written regarding this solar eclipse. A lot of things going on.
Really
Where has that not been a eclipse whereby there's not many things to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. Good point. Really loved your overview, and I'm going to give you, guys, again, more of a fire sale. Material foundations, new beginnings, with money, resources, worth, valuables, investments. The global crisis, I would say we can call it, and the lack of goods coming in. This has everybody on their toes already. This is why I mentioned that the energies of this eclipse will be felt earlier. And I think now, after this, maybe even before, during it, the decisions, what to do, how to act, the governments, corporations, institutions, they will start to reveal what will happen, how we will do, what will happen with these goods and things. We'll see that. Shocking, yes, most likely it will be not the most comfortable of matters. The bigger theme, I think, on a personal level is how I, as a person, create more foundational financial material independence and freedom for myself moving forward. And at the same time, the reasons, why we're thinking this and why it's coming up for us is because the foundations can be even further shocked. Already people are shocked, but, understand that, like we said, these things constantly affect one another. So a decision is made here, we put blockages on Russia. Now the things start becoming evident. We don't have this. Other businesses are affected. Everybody on this planet is actually affected because Russia is such a big country. Everybody on this planet has some sort of business associated with it. That's the way we are right now. We're interlinked. Everything is connected. So we're going to see those things starting to affect us even more. Now, shocks, I think Donnie mentioned already the stock market, financial market. I do definitely see a shock here coming as well. Exactly where the price is going to go. It's quite difficult to say, but up and down movements for sure. So be careful out there if you have investments on the markets. On a personal level, what is truly important for me financially, materially? What is truly valuable for me? These are also questions we're going to be asking because we're going to have to be making choices as well. And some of these choices aren't going to be super pleasant for us. We're going to have to react quickly. Where do I put my money? Where do I grow it? How do I even grow my money? Is it evaporating with inflation? Where is the safe havens? These are the questions we're going to need to be asking because it's so shocking. What is there left that is safe or has the illusion at least of safety? I think the illusion of safety and the illusion of having firm foundations can be quite well shocked during this eclipse as well. Emotional.
Do you see a lot of scammers coming up as well, like with all the Pisces energy?
Definitely, because we're talking about, guys, we're talking about a couple of conjunctions here as well, because Jupiter and Venus will conjunct, but Venus and Neptune will conjunct quite close to this eclipse. So guys, be really careful, online especially, but even, it's like walking down the streets and stores, the goods offered to you, I don't know, not good maybe. If it seems too good to be true, most likely it is. And if it promises amazing returns and that, do your research. Where is the money coming from? How is the business operating? These are good questions to ask because, when you're out there online, anybody can do a fancy website and put in, fast returns, financial freedom. But where is the money actually coming from? Ask yourself, is the business actually operating? Really important questions to ask. God. But I think on a positive note, emotional liberation through material matters is also capable or possible here, probabilities here, because I made a lot of, I won't share the exact decisions I made here, but I did make a lot of personal decisions, for example, and I think a lot of people are also making those decisions, that they're letting go of certain kinds of material possessions, material things, in order to create more liberation, freedom in their lives. And I do see, especially with this eclipse, that trend happening more. Like, what do I need? What is the actual thing that I need, and what is like more excessive? These are the questions I think we need to ask, and this eclipse will bring these up anyway.
I thought it's a very good chart to do like a garage sale. To sell off your possessions that you don't need. Yeah.
And make them look better.
Yeah. Or maybe like sell them at inflated prices, right? Jupiter Venus conjunction at its highest exalted point. People may be willing to spend thinking it's a bargain.
Yeah. Guys, don't misuse this information, please. But yeah, the possibility is there. Also put down here, push and pull between our material desires and needing to let go of some older things, matters, patterns, how we relate to material things. Cyber attacks, like Donnie and I both, I think, mentioned, but I also added here, on financial institutions. And this means also banks as well. Guys, I think Donnie already mentioned the stock market. It is a possibility here. So be careful. Electricity, I also want to mention, can be problems with electricity. Prices going up still, interruptions, and people will start to understand they need to find other solutions, because it will get so uncomfortable, or the prices will go so big. And on a positive note, some solutions can be offered coming months as well. And what I also wrote here is, people start to understand the importance of natural resources more. Suddenly it will become evident that the milk does not come from the store, guys. And when I was writing this, guys, I was laughing, and I was like, well, who thinks like that? And unfortunately, because our newer generations are so immersed in the city culture, they don't, haven't even spent time in the countryside, or they aren't, really learning a lot about these things. They don't know where these resources are coming from. And thankfully, I had the luxury of growing up on the countryside, so I know. I've milked the cow, I've touched the uterus, I've taken the manure, whatever. I've done it all. So I know.
I had a good laugh the other day while queuing up to buy some groceries, and this kid said, "Don't cows drink milk?" Thank God I'm wearing a mask,
But this is a problem, guys. We're laughing. I know we're laughing, but it's dark humor. It's dark humor for me, especially. But it's a worrying sign. It's a worrying sign when children think cows drink milk, and the milk comes from the stores. It doesn't. There's a process. People are doing it. Machines are doing it. It's coming from somewhere, and people need to understand that when you put on sanctions, etc., it will affect everybody. If you change laws. For example, if you change laws, it will affect the way we create or grow food, So these things are connected.
Piggybacking off you said, right? A lot of people don't realize that we are in a major shortage of fertilizers to grow crops. And where does the nitrogen compound that's used to actively used in agriculture come from? This comes from oil.
Guys.
And you can see
Teach
how
your
the
children.
supply chain just kind of like, trickles down into what we are having now. I don't know.
Which brings me to my next point is supply lines. Troubles continue, become more evident. New crypto projects, but I think here I want to say new government crypto projects can be revealed. It is a longer process, but news coming in more, and we will see it moving forward even more. They want to do the government crypto thing, and then want to digitalize it. I think one of the couple of last things I have here is limiting our desires, limiting the need for our material desires. People will start to think twice if they start to buy some luxurious goods. And we will start to think also on a bigger scale, like Donnie said, fertilizers. Where are these things coming from? How do we build better structures? What do we need to do now as a society to build something that is more sustainable? Like something happens, we can sustain ourselves.
Actually, where do I see this is because the asteroid series at 24 of Gemini is squaring 3 planets in Pisces. So there may be, because Pisces is oil, right? Series is about the agricultural aspect of things. So that's why this leads me to think like the whole fertilizer shortage is going to be even more pronounced, because we need the phosphorus and we need the nitrogen compounds in order to grow commercial crops. Yeah. And I hope people know that how much it is okay to buy ugly fruits and vegetables as long as they're edible. Everything that ends up on the shelf of the supermarket, they're the pretty ones. But how many layers of sorting and how many are being thrown away along the way? That's totally edible just that because you're ugly.
Yeah, it's crazy, guys. And I've even because we for our family we grow our food as well on our farm. We have a farm, but it's like even there are sometimes wastefulness happens even there, so you need to think about it. And it doesn't matter. It basically doesn't matter that it looks bad, the nutrients and what is it, the word that I'm looking for, what you need to get from the food is usually there, if it's not some sort of spray thing, but the nutrients are there regardless of how it looks. Yeah, that's the thing. The last thing, yeah, go ahead.
How come I do see that they're trying to push the insects as food agenda as well?
Oh, interesting.
Because like when I see Mars, Pluto, Venus, these planets cohesively actually talks about insect as food, and Mars is connected to Uranus, and also the sun and moon.
Guys, if this happens, I mean, we need to, I don't know, buy Donnie a coffee or something, because this is to pick up something like that from a chart is pretty darn good. And let's see if news come from that. But I think even from a logical perspective, times are tough.
No, I mean nothing like this should shock you by now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
And I think the last thing I want to say about this, the energies that I see coming in here, are these problems that are happening, the governments that are making decisions, people are suffering, prices are rising. We've been talking about protests for a while anyway, but this will add up, and more people will go to the streets, and more protests will definitely happen still this year, guys. There it is.
I know there's a lot to dissect, right? It's such a loaded April to start with. I just want to mention here as part of the outro that while Ian was you know, giving all his wisdom and knowledge to you guys, I've been also Googling whatever that's been going on in the news to kind of paint for you what's coming up potentially in terms of planetary manifestations. And just in the past few days, Biden has actually told US troops that they are going into Ukraine and that the US had adopted a new nuclear first strike policy.
Did he actually say that?
So we may actually see some kind of development that into April. And there's also like a news headline on Bloomberg. I'll take that with a pinch of salt, but it actually says that Europe has only 40 days of diesel stock left.
That's very little.
Which means that they may actually run out towards beginning of May. And this is very much tying into the charts that we have displayed over this this recording session regarding like there's this recurring theme of resource scarcity and austerity that may lead to some form of rationing, or if I were to be honest, there may be some potential blackouts as well, if ever it comes to that point. So I hate to end on a sour note, but then it's like sometimes it's as above, so below.
Guys, I think it's better. I think we can find, you know, the silver linings here of you know, building better structures, building better things in the future, and making sure we use things better. But that really doesn't take away of the situation where we're at. And what is the truth of the situation? What is the reality of the situation? Yes, the news can say weird things and maybe paint it in a brighter light sometimes, but you know.
Well,
God,
I would
don't
say,
even know what to say
I would
exactly.
say
What's the...
although I take most news with a pinch of salt, but the overall direction is really leading us to keep things very simple and basic for ourselves, because the North Node, which is our collective destiny, is in Taurus. And Taurus is a very simple sign. It just wants to sustain, to survive, you know.
Sustain. And now I know, now it's coming. Sustain. Choose practically the things. Understand that we are in a difficult situation. Make practical, grounded decisions. Don't let yourself get carried away in those blind faith type energies. Put your hand in the dirt, so to speak. Put your mind and curiosity in the dirt and make practical decisions, guys.
Because honestly, with that Taurus solar eclipse that we just mentioned, there's one point which kind of skipped over my mind, but new moon conjunct Uranus in Taurus can also mean retrenchments of workforce as well.
Interesting.
So it could be like an increased acceleration of people losing their jobs.
It's, you know, it's happening already here in Estonia because, you know, we're very much connected to Russia and a lot of businesses are connected to Russia. Business not there.
Yeah. And also like businesses will be like really get cornered from all sides, rising cost, increased production cost, not just everything really. And then it's even more important to support your mom and pop shops that you love and value, to prevent them from, or farmers markets, to prevent them from going out of business, because they may not bounce back after this. So it's even more important where we spend our money at. Yeah.
I think that's a very good note. Like a more optimistic, a little bit more optimistic note to it.
Because I've been supporting stores that, you know, like I hate to see them go out of business because of, you know, whatever's going on. And your money speaks louder than words, honestly. And But at the same time, I'm trying to keep my life very basic because that's what Taurus North Node is about. Strip down to the basic: food, shelter, and warmth. Honestly, the rest are just fluff when we have like North Node in Taurus.
Nice.
So when are you going to, next time when I see you, you're going to be reporting from a new country?
The next time, guys, the next time I'm going to be doing this, I will be in a totally different country, in a
totally different
time zone.
background. Yeah.
Totally different background. Not exactly 100%. I know approximately what that background is going to look like.
Right.
But so many things working here, and I am literally experiencing so many changes in my life. It's quite intense to go through these, but also at the same time, like I mentioned during the new moon eclipse, is also very emotionally liberating, because I can see how many and how much I was holding on to certain kinds of things, certain kinds of safety, certain kind of securities, and now letting go of them is a very emotionally also a difficult thing, but also later on it's a liberating feeling as well.
Uranus liberates. Yeah.
Exactly. Not in a comfortable way, but it does liberate you from many things.
So cheers to new beginnings.
Cheers to new awesome beginnings. And next time I will share more of where I'm at if I'm there. Guys, I hope you
hope over this April, really.
Take care. Wishing you strength, wishing you grounded beliefs. And if you want to work with us, the link will be in the description box. And see you again in the next month's overview.
Ciao from where I am. Bye.